Apple was making fun of, we're not making fun of, but they were saying we're different than IBM. Whereas Jaguar is saying we're different than ourselves. Like we're gonna call ourselves the Stade. Hey, Steve, welcome back.
Ian, how are you, my friend? You're looking a little rough.
Yeah. Oh, we had our closing dinner last night for OneClick. My company Dig acquired a social media platform. OneClick.
I did read that. Congratulations.
Thank you. But it was a late night for the closing dinner. Probably drank a little too much, and I'm feeling it today. Yeah, me. How about you? You guys are in the news all the time these days. 2044. You're killing it with the PR, man. What's going on?
Well, AI is a great assistant when it comes to that, and you just put it on autopilot. We actually have our 2005 AI adoption report coming out at the end of this year, which is very cool, focused around the small to medium businesses. And then we also partner with the Canadian Marketing Association. We've got a specific AI adoption report coming out within the marketing community in Canada, probably early January. That'll be out. So yeah, it's been fun.
Nice. So smart. I'm jealous of that one. It's so smart what you've been doing with AI. So anyways, we're back again for another episode of Unsolicited Business Advice. And today,
well, Ian, listen, before you go there, I gotta tee this one up.
Okay.
Whose hood are we looking under? And just to let the listeners know, you better buckle up on this one because this is a good one.
Yeah, this is one we've all been talking about for a while now. Jaguar, the company that's done everything wrong. It's just going to be a fun one.
Yeah, you got to go over the stats on this one.
Oh my God.
This is incredible. Particularly when you show that one chart. I remember when you showed that first to me about the decline. This wasn't just from this one campaign. This has been going on for a long time. This is systemic. This is a major problem.
Oh yeah. Let's dig into the numbers, and I'm going to show you the chart. Okay, so peak to crisis in 2017, they sold about 40,000 units in the U.S. They're down to 5,000 in Europe. They went from 1,900 units to 49 in April 2025. We're talking about a 97.5% collapse, following both the controversial rebrand, which we all saw and heard about, but also them discontinuing all the models except for the F-Pace. I mean, creating an 18 to 24 month showroom vacuum with only the F-Pace remaining. 395 U.S. dealerships face completely and empty inventory. Insane strategy. Internal opposition through the rebrand. They had 25 to 30 designers warning leadership back in September 2022, all the way back then about the rebrand strategy, criticizing both the strategy and also criticizing the fact that they had outsourced it to Accenture. Public ridicule. This is some of my favorite stuff. So 42.7% of consumers had a negative response to the ad, and political backlash. Trump called it stupid. Elon Musk put on Twitter, "Do you sell cars?"
Well, the Trump quote, that's the kettle calling the cat black, or whatever that saying is. But anyway.
Sure. But the point is, everyone felt like they were free to make fun of Jaguar at the time. So we're going to continue with that because why the hell not? Leadership turnover. Adrian Mardell, who was the guy who oversaw this, he departed 8 or 9 months right after the rebrand, calling it a planned retirement, which of course makes no sense. But they've replaced him with this guy, PB Balaji, who was the former group CFO at Tata Motors. And so we know when you're in a PR crisis,
the guy to lean on is the CFO.
That's who you bring in. That's the creative genius
turnaround guy.
Yeah, it worked so well for Nissan with Gozen when he got arrested, right? And then we've got what you probably don't know is since all of that, all the stuff that was so well publicized, They just suffered the costliest cyber breach in British corporate history in September, forcing a 5-week global production shutdown with a quarterly loss of $1.9 billion and a UK economic impact requiring $3.5 billion in emergency liquidity support.
How does a company, like, it just feels like every time they're just getting kicked, like they're down, not just in the sales, but the brand, customers defecting, employees defecting, and then this happens? Like, it just feels like someone is out to get Jaguar. Like, it almost feels like someone's trying to sabotage this brand from the outside or inside. I'm not sure. Maybe both.
Or they're just like, it's just that vicious cycle. It's just like,
Could be.
they're just like that drunk that won't accept it. You know what I mean? Like,
They need an
like
intervention.
that uncle who at Thanksgiving suddenly like smacks somebody, Anyways,
Remind me not to go to your place for Thanksgiving.
how families do. But this is the chart. Let's look at that. So they were on a 6-year decline, but then they threw some gasoline on that fire to really tank themselves at the end there. So the question becomes, it's not like they weren't having trouble, right? So there was some reasoning, I suppose, behind the idea of a rebrand, but I don't think that was the way to do it. We'll talk about a little bit about that.
Well, it's interesting, that chart you were showing. It reminded me, as I was thinking about this session we were going to do, was I am not a Jaguar guy. Like, that's not my car. That's not the thing. But back in 2016, so when you looked at that chart, they were kind of on the trajectory up. So I was playing in a golf tournament, and we actually won something closest to the hole or something like that. And the prize was we got a Jaguar XF for a week to drive. So I went to pick it up. And again, like I said, it wasn't something I was like, oh, I'm so looking forward to this. I get there and I pull up and I look at this car and I'm like, this is spectacular. Like, it wasn't what was in my mind of a Jaguar, right? I had that image of like old man driving in this, big giant sort of, almost Lincoln looking vehicle. Anyway, I pull up and it was sleek, and I got into it. And it was just awesome. Like, and the engine was just fantastic. And so I'm just thinking to myself, this is a really spectacular. And then I get on the highway as I'm heading home, and people are honking and giving me the thumbs up and rolling their windows down. And like I was like, this is fantastic. And then I picked up the family and said, we got to go for a drive. And the family was like, this is our new car, Dad? Like, this is spectacular. Like, this was a Jaguar. Like, I never thought it was going to be a Jaguar. Like, they were on this trajectory upwards.
Right.
And then it just turned over, and it just seemed to be that just on a complete slide ever since.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think the actual car, the new car, the type, 00, is that bad. Actually, it's not a terrible looking car in my opinion.
Agreed. Yeah.
I don't like it in baby blue and pink, personally.
Well, we're going to disagree with that.
I think that was a strange choice. And
This is coming from a guy that wears black all the time, by the way.
There you go. But I personally, I think that's a mistake. But the rest of it, the car's not bad. The ad was a catastrophe. It didn't even show the car.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And everyone's made fun of the advertising. And we can show it again, but you know what it was. It was the strange androgynous models with the giant shoulder pads and the bad haircuts. What was like the bangs,
Yeah.
I mean, that was obviously.
Well, this is, I think, a classic case of you've got board, executive, product design, internal employees, customers, market. You've got a complete disconnect between all those groups. Complete disconnect, right? Maybe the board and the executive team, they might have been on the same page, but I would be shocked if they were. But clearly, with the employees leaving the organization, the head of design resigning, like, there was a complete disconnect with what that overall strategy was going to be. Because, like, I will say, and I have to discuss this a little bit, is like, I don't mind a big, bold strategy. In fact, I didn't even mind the campaign so much. It just lacked like a tactical follow-up. Like, strategically, let's make a big, bold statement. Let's come up with something different. I'm okay with that. Like, there's lots of examples of that in history. 1984, the Apple campaign is a perfect example of that. But what did Apple do? They followed up with the Mac. Then they followed up with Think Different. They did a complete holistic thinking about what this is going to look like in the long term. Jaguar just seemed to be lost with that. And then some of the other decisions beyond the campaign to stop the product lines, the other product lines, when they didn't even have an actual EV car available. And now it's because of this cyber attack, it's even delayed more. Like, this just seems to be almost like executive sabotage. Like, this is just criminal activity as far as I'm concerned.
Right. I love that you brought up 1984, and I think you're right. I think obviously a 6-year sales slide, you need to do something. But I think the big difference between, Apple was making fun of, not making fun of, but they were saying, we're different than IBM. They were saying, whereas Jaguar is saying we're different than ourselves. Like we're going to call ourselves the Stade.
Yeah. Or they were almost like it was almost like an attack on their customers in a way. Like, we're not these old stodgy guys. We're these new, whatever, padded shoulder. It just was a complete attack on their sort of loyal customer base. That's a really, really great point.
So I think that was a total misstep. Look, let me ask you 2 big questions that I have about this, Steve. One, did they need to do a rebrand at all?
Yeah, they needed to. And again, and we've just talked about it a little bit. I mean, strategically, they needed to do something. They needed to do something bold. We could argue the points, sort of the tactical execution of the campaign. Is this the right way to do it? Is right way to sort of like go all in on EV? Like, sure, we could debate some of the time. They could have probably changed some of those things along the way. I think the other part of it was they didn't do any sort of customer testing. They did a little bit. The best piece I could find was they did a Gen Pop study of 7,000 people, I think in the US only. And all they actually tested was the new logo. Well, it came out pretty positive in terms of sort of the results, but nobody tested like the campaign or any of the other sort of execution elements. It just seemed to be like a massively disconnected program. And whoever was driving the ship on that, they clearly didn't have their hands on the wheel, right? So did they need to do it? I think they needed to do something. Did they need to do it? So strategically, yes. Tactically is where it really fell down.
I don't know if they needed to do anything that bold. I'm going to disagree with you. I think that to your point, they didn't do any consumer research.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if they'd done consumer research, they would have realized the problem wasn't the way their cars looked, because I think even their latest sports cars, they look pretty nice. I think it was their perception of quality, because I actually own a Range Rover Land Rover, and I only had it for a few months before the suspension went. They said it was a break in the line, and I ended up having to spend $6,000 to get it fixed. That wasn't covered by warranty for some mysterious reason. And of course, when I bought that car, everybody said to me, they're a little unreliable. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that's the consumer research they should have listened to. They should listen to what are the actual barriers to purchase for people for Jaguar Land Rover.
Yeah, you're talking about
quality.
Yeah, well, I think there's an aspect of like incremental innovation, right? So they could have improved the product. They could have come out with like, and you've talked about this around like maybe it's a hybrid versus fully EV. Like there's different things they could have done incrementally along the way. And you should talk about, you've got a really great idea as well, this is what I'm saying. Like I think they should come out with a big, bold statement, which they did. And then tactically follow it up to make sure that you've got it. So you came up with a really good idea from a sales distribution perspective. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I think this is their big opportunity. I think, they were Jaguar in the Austin Power movies. It was the Jaguar. They should be the Jaguar in the new James Bond movies. Amazon now bought the rights to Bond. I think everyone knows that.
Yeah.
That's what they need to go after. They need to be everywhere Jeff Bezos's monster yacht lands.
Yeah.
PB needs to be there. Like, hey, Jaguar. It needs to be Jaguar now. Jaguar. It needs to be Jaguar. And then they should sell it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And I think that would get,
I love that.
they would get so much publicity from that. Actually, you know what? This is interesting. Amazon now lets customers buy cars online in partnership with local dealerships. You can browse, choose finance, or pay in full on Amazon, and then pick up the car at a dealer. New cars launched with Hyundai across 48 to 54 states, covering 70% of Hyundai's U.S. sales. Used and certified pre-owned cars launched first in Los Angeles, now expanding to more U.S. cities. People don't even really know about that. They're not like Carvana or what are the other ones that are well known? I should know. I think they're our clients, so that doesn't look good.
You should probably know.
I should know that one. But anyways, but I think this would get a lot more PR than the Hyundai would.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's
But this is what I'm saying. Like it's that whole thing around following up.
Yeah.
With like, again, back to sort of 1984 and Apple, and they launched the Mac and then they follow up with other things. And look, it's been well documented of the missteps that Apple made, but they also made a tremendous amount of things right along that. And it's been well documented. Like, this is how you do a bold statement, a bold campaign, a bold positioning. I love what you said about like, they really were attacking their competition, not attacking like themselves. Like, that's a really good statement as well. But can you touch on as well, and I know we're talking specifically about should they do this campaign, but I think a big part of this campaign was the fact that it was EV focused, right? We're all in on this. Like, again, that was part of the big, bold strategy. It wasn't just about,
shoulder pads.
But, talk a little bit about the EV market, because I think this is an interesting, some of the stats around what's going on with that as well.
Right. And I think there's a lot of stories out there right now that EVs are failing. They're not failing. EVs are still up about 25%. In 2024, they were up about 25%. 17.1 million units worldwide EV sales. Forecast for 22 million units in 2025. So their global market share, though, is only about 20%. So you're going to have a strategy that says we're going to be the luxury end of a niche British sports car company that's going to target a subset of the 20% EV market for people who love bangs and giant shoulder pads. Like, it's just, blows my mind.
Well, one thing you could argue is maybe this is their strategy. Not to tank the company, but to get it to be hyper focused. And because, like, how do you stem the slide, right? How do you stop this sales slide? Obviously the sales slide's happening for a bunch of different reasons, right? Like, they weren't coming out with any new models. They weren't doing anything innovative. And again, I personally think that you could easily point to the disconnect internally. I think that's where it really starts. Clearly it had nothing to do with like, the Jaguar brand. People are just getting tired. Like, there's lots of things you could have done with that to refresh that brand. But the other thing I just want to pick up when you talked about around the Amazon piece as well, I think what I would even go one step further with that, I would start experimenting with like a subscription, like almost like kind of the next generation of leasing would be like a subscription model. And I've told you this before, like, I'm very bullish on the idea of like fully autonomous vehicles. And I'm very much so on this idea that I do believe optimistically that, we could have a world without parking lots and vehicles are always moving. And this idea of ownership, like, I really don't care if I own my vehicle, right? I really don't have any desire. And everybody knows the minute you drive it off the lot, it's depreciated by 50%. Like, it's just not an asset to really own. I get why we own these things and I get why we have these things. And what's interesting too is, like, I was really surprised to see this too. Like, leasing rates were on the rise and the pandemic seemed to just kind of stall it and even went the other way. So in North America, only about a quarter of cars are leased now, which I thought that was it was about a third and it's gone to about a quarter now. So, in some ways people have moved to buying. I think that has a lot to do with just the way the interest rates and things like that have gone on as well. And I think that's created that sort of like, wait a minute, I just don't have the money to be able to do this on a monthly basis. But I actually think it'd be interesting for them to try new innovative things. Back to that, idea of like continuously trying and innovating on top of what they're doing. So do a bold statement, do something out that, but then also continue to try these other strategic relationships, i.e., for example, the Amazon one. I think that's absolutely brilliant. And I have a thought about that as well in the future.
And I like that as well. I do think that they're already teaming up with Waymo. I think Jaguar is doing some Waymo cars, so that's a great trial mechanism.
Yeah.
Tech forward, leads in exactly that trend that you're talking about.
Yeah. Great way to try. I hadn't thought of that. It's an interesting idea. It's like, want to test drive the vehicle? Go try Waymo, like, or maybe they even do this like Uber, or they're obviously not going to do this Tesla, but that would be an interesting strategy. You want to test drive the new vehicle. It's actually on Waymo.
Yeah, absolutely. So
well, actually, technically, you're not test driving.
So they're doing something. It seems like they're doing at least one thing right.
Yeah.
But what I think is really ironic with the whole idea of like being different and reinventing everything is like all of the other companies. So GM, Honda, Toyota, Mercedes, they're all delaying or scaling back their EV plans. And these guys are like, we're only EV. I just think that's an example of like, you just completely misread the room, both in terms of like just the general trends of what's going on with EV, in terms of like sort of the zeitgeist of how people were going to react to this advertising campaign, and the fact that you're going to go ahead and alienate your own customers.
So you asked me a big question around whether or not strategically they should have done this big, bold campaign. Let me ask you a strategic question. So, did Jaguar really, should they have really been outsourcing this to Accenture? Right? Did they kind of give the keys, so to speak, to Accenture? And should they have done this?
I don't get it. I mean, I know they've got Accenture Song. I know they've got a creative agency, but I wouldn't, if I was going to do something this big, I wouldn't have gone with Accenture. Like, no offense to Accenture, I'm sure they've got some brilliant people, but I would have gone with like a traditional creative agency, I think, personally.
Yeah.
But it's probably unfair. To your point, this seems like it's a completely, like this company seems really dysfunctional. So do we think that dysfunction started at Accenture? Probably not.
No.
I mean, you and I, we both have been consultants.
Yeah.
How many times have you told a client to do A and they did B?
No. More times than I can count. Absolutely. And there's only so much you can do to convince a client. And, there's that old saying as well, like, you don't want to get them fired internally, you go hire the consultant, right? So there's maybe some truth to this. Yeah, I don't necessarily blame Accenture, but what I thought about was you brought up the EV stats. Like, these were trends that were going on long before they did this campaign, right? Like, you could see kind of the writing on the wall, what was happening. Like, to me, an Accenture would be a really interesting decision because they are a strategic consulting company, maybe not quite like a McKinsey, which is deep into data and things like that. Accenture is known a little more for their tech forward approach to things. But I would think their analysts would be looking at us going, wait a second, folks, is this the right thing to put all your money into it? So I would think the agency, I would be really shocked. Back to your point, we would go in and tell our clients, like, we don't think this is the right direction, right? This is why. I mean, that's why we're hired to be there, right? And you and I aren't shy to give it straight, right? So I'd be shocked if the folks at Accenture didn't give them some kind of indication this is the wrong way. I could be wrong. Maybe they just were kind of the yes people and just took the direction from the senior executives and sure, we'll execute it and we'll take your several millions of dollars and go do this. And whether it's a big flop or not, what do we care, right? So, but like, think about it. Any agency, any organization, you never want to be associated to a flop.
No.
Right? Like you're doing it because you want to be in front of the awards, getting the big trophies. You want to be able to publicize this. You want to be written up in the ad ages on the front page of, biggest comeback story, not the worst campaign ever. Right? Like,
this is new Coke. This is going to be taught in business school case studies forever now.
Absolutely. If Ivy hasn't written this up, well, you and I got to write this up. And
100%.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, I don't know what PB is going to... I don't know PB Balaji. I don't know PB. His name sounds like peanut butter, which I think... If he hires like a COO named Jelly, and he's PB and J, they need to go in. PB and J needs to go in and clean this up.
Yeah.
Like, they need to clean house. Like, there is a level of management in this company that is obviously completely dysfunctional.
Yeah.
They're not doing consumer research. They need to be doing way more consumer research. They need to be listening to their own employees. I think that's where you got to start. Like,
what's your thought on taking just a bit of a side step, and then we're going to come back to Jaguar. But I think there's a bigger question here about the industry as a whole, right? The automotive industry and maybe EV as a subset of that. What's your perspective and where it's headed, where it should kind of head?
I mean, I think that, you're not going to own anything and you're going to be happy. I don't know we're going really there. I think a car, well, look, I could be out of step with everybody, but a car has always kind of meant freedom, like a car. If you think it back to like when they built Route 66 and stuff, I mean, there's still a car culture. I mean, what are we on, Fast and Furious 21 or something? Yeah. I mean, there's still people love their cars, and I love my cars, and I think people are always going to want to own their cars.
Yeah.
So I don't think we're going there yet, but I do think that it's definitely a segment of the market that they should pursue, because I think big urban centers, New York, Chicago, maybe, definitely London, like places where you can't drive and you can't park.
Yeah.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm on the other side of the fence. I do think there's a world where, I think you've said you own your vehicles. And truth be told, I usually own one of them. But I typically lease the vehicles, and because I want to get a new one every 3 or 4 years, right? So there is something to be said too, that cars are lasting longer now. They're better built, all those kinds of things. So I used to have this rule: if it got to 100,000 kilometers, it'd start falling apart, and it usually did. And it was, he's had the 80,000, 90,000 warranty, and then after that, it would always sort of start to cause the problem. So it was always like, okay, I'm going to roll the vehicle over. But I do think cars are built better now. But it's kind of like the way I sort of look at it too is it's very much so like the mobile device in your pocket. It really is a mobile platform, and it very much so is, a mechanism to get these human bodies and brains from A to B, right? So, but even your devices, you're often not even owning your devices anymore. Like if you look at a lot of these communication plans now, they tend to be more leasing, and you've got it for a year or two because the next model's coming out, right? So now again, a car is a bit of a different thing. That's a harder thing to produce a car every year or come out with something every 2 years. But I'm on the other side of the fence on that one. I do think there's going to be less and less ownership of it, and just the benefits of, I mentioned about no parking lots, but even I didn't talk about this, was insurance companies. If all of a sudden everything's autonomous and there's a huge amount of software built into things, and we get to a point where the cameras and the technology, the LiDAR systems is so sophisticated where we don't have any accidents anymore. Why do we need insurance companies?
Right.
So,
well, that's a bigger question than I've thought through for today, but that's a good point.
Yeah.
But I do think, look, let's believe that the market is going to striate, and that there's going to be a very meaningful portion of the consumer base that isn't going to own a car.
Yeah.
It's not going to be the guys who are spending $120,000 to $140,000 on a sports car.
That is true.
So Jaguar is not in the piece of that market that I think is really going to be affected.
Well done bringing it back to Jaguar.
Thank you. We were down the rabbit hole. No, that's so. I mean, let's. What do they do now?
Yeah. Well, so something I think you said it as well, really well, is any kind of PR crisis, because that's what they're kind of in, or brand crisis in this case, or company crisis. You really need to lean into the mistake. You need to own the mistake. So that whole idea of the Jaguar to the Jaguar, poke fun at it a little bit, have some fun with it, right?
Laugh at yourself.
100%. I think you'll gain a tremendous amount of empathy from your customers by doing that, right?
Right.
So, and they're just not doing that, and they're just getting kicked, like now with the cyber breach, like they're just constantly getting beaten up, and they really need to own that mistake and lean into it as well. So I would say that's one thing that they really need to do. The other thing, back to the bold thing, and not just the bold campaign or maybe the product line, but um, don't just like talk about maybe what the next year or two looks like. I would come out with a really bold approach around here's the next 10 or 15 years look like, and here's where we're going, and make like a huge statement around what that looks like. Including, by the way, back to your idea about selling on Amazon. Here's how we're going to distribute cars in the future. Here's how we're going to sell cars. Maybe, and again, this is something that the dealers wouldn't like this, but maybe we move away from dealerships. Lots of the EV cars and like the Teslas, like they set up in malls. Like that was
Right.
unheard of at the time.
Yeah.
You're walking around and you're buying a car like you're buying a pair of shoes, like just like our last thing with On, right?
Yeah.
So maybe On and Jaguar are in the same mall together, right?
Yeah.
So I think the idea of like maybe have a roadmap beyond the product, but how strategically we're going to do things and be bold about it. Like, you got nothing to lose now. You got
Yeah.
nothing to lose.
Well, that makes sense. They need to signal to the market that they actually know what's going on, because
Yeah.
they've just proven that they didn't know.
Yeah. And I still want to just go one step further with your idea about the Amazon. You make a good point about them owning the Bond franchise. And so, like, how do you regain customer loyalty? But probably more importantly, how do you regain your employee loyalty, and how do you actually bring them back into the fold? So I'd even be as bold as bring back some of those designers, like bring some of them back and apologize to them, right?
Right.
But I think what they need to do is make a huge change in terms of who's actually leading this transformation, or this, like trying to dig themselves out. And I would even go completely outside of the automotive industry, back to your Bond thing, and I would look to the movie industry. I would look at who are the most transformational people, or the people that can revitalize brands. And a guy like J.J. Abrams, bring him on,
Right.
third of the time.
As a creative
You
consultant.
got it. How many
Yeah.
times have like organizations done this with artists? And often it comes over very successful. Drake with the Raptors, for
Yeah.
example. So there's many examples out there. Bring him in and say, we're going to do this. Can you imagine the collaboration around
Right.
that? Like, and the reason why I say the 007 is just because I think the Bond, it's one of the most historic franchise. That's what I love about that. You're putting a nod to very nostalgic, good
Right.
feeling things, but also talk about a brand or a franchise that's reinvented itself. Like Sean Connery to Daniel Craig, very, very different franchise.
I'm a Roger Moore guy, so yeah.
Fair. Everybody's got their favorite Bond, but the idea of reinventing it, like get somebody involved that knows how to reinvent those kinds of things and bring it back.
Right.
So, and can you imagine that person being inside of Jaguar? Like that's not a CFO. That's a creative person that's going to inspire people.
Well, and they named it the 00. Like they named it the 00. I mean,
like
it
they
was meant.
it.
It was like it was meant to be.
Yeah.
They need to be the 007.
Yeah.
But
What do you think?
yeah, I think all the things you said. I think, look, they've got to make a bold statement to the market, and to not just their consumers, but also the market. So they need to do some major overhaul.
Yeah.
I love the idea of bringing back the people that said, "We told you so." Like when
Yeah.
they brought when Apple brought back jobs.
Yeah.
I like the idea of I definitely love my own idea, obviously, of being the Bond car and selling on Amazon. The J.J. Abrams collaboration, that sounds awesome. If they could pull that off, that'd be amazing. I hate the blue and the pink. I know you and I are going to disagree with that, but the blue and the pink cars are so dumb.
I'm happy to go with, like, you could talk about emerald green, maybe like a light
British
green.
racing green. It bridges the old and they own it. They owned it. They were the British racing green.
Yeah.
Well, them and the MG, but still.
Yeah. You guys are going to talk about Pantone colors soon.
Yes, that's right. We'll bring out the little paint shop symbol. But I think all those things together, I think it could turn the ship. I think if they did those things, I think if they made some, and I love the idea of a 15 to 20, like, stop thinking short term.
Yeah.
Prove that you actually can look at the trends
Yeah.
and understand
Yeah.
and do some consumer research, for God's sake.
Oh my gosh. That
Yeah.
that would be kind of like baseline at this point. And I don't think they have
Yeah.
to go very far to basically just go out and ask a customer what they think. And I'm sure they'll get an earful.
Well, this was a fun one. This is a
Right.
lot easier than On Running, which
Yeah.
was our last episode, where that was like trying to like tell a world class athlete how to do better at their sport. This was a lot easier than that. So,
Ton of fun. Always enjoy this time.
all right, thanks so much, Steve.
We just gave you free advice on someone else's business. Want expert insights on yours? Dig Insights delivers the consumer research that drives high-stakes innovation for brands like McDonald's, Coca-Cola, and hundreds more. Ready to outperform your competition? Visit diginsights.com. Dig Insights. Future proven.
AI adoption starts with people, not technology. This episode is brought to you by 2044. An AI 44 assessment gives you a complete view of AI readiness, delivering a clear roadmap with ROI-focused priorities. Learn more at 2044.co.